Chapter 1. Footprints in the Sand. The plane touched down with a muted hum, the kind of sound that quietly announced the end of something and the beginning of something else entirely. Lena pressed her forehead to the cool glass of the airplane window, her breath fogging a small circle as she peered down at the vast coastal stretch beneath them. The sand shimmered like scattered stardust. Waves moved in slow, rhythmic patterns, as if breathing. She had dreamed of this, not the place specifically, but the sensation of leaving, of shedding the layers of a tightly wound life in the city, meetings, calendars, subway delays, neon lights. Here, in this corner of southern Portugal, she was far from all of it. "Looks like heaven," Nico said beside her, voice soft but clear. He wasn't a man of many words. Lena had come to appreciate that. When he did speak, it was worth listening to. "It's better," she murmured. They met 2 months ago, a photography class at the community center. Random pairings. He shot in black and white. She loved vivid colors. He waited 10 minutes for a cloud to shift. She chased moments, rapid fire. It shouldn't have worked, but it did. They disagreed on almost everything, yet never argued. And when Lena, on a whim, suggested escaping for the summer, she didn't expect Nico to say yes. Yet here they were. They stepped off the shuttle into the midday sun. The heat was honest. No humidity, no city smog. Just golden warmth brushing against skin like silk. The air smelled of salt and citrus. The village was small, almost too perfect to be real. Whitewashed buildings with terracotta roofs. Narrow cobblestone streets. And local children playing barefoot with a battered soccer ball. The homestay was owned by an older woman named Amalia, who wore a red scarf in her hair and spoke English with a sing-song lilt. She gave them a single key, a brass one, and warned them gently about the tide. "Time moves with the sea here," she said. "If you listen closely, it'll tell you when to stay and when to go." Their room was simple. Wood beam ceiling, a bed with white linen sheets, a window that opened toward the ocean, and a small shelf with books in different languages. It was perfect. Nico placed his camera bag gently on the windowsill. Lena stood in the center of the room, spinning slowly. "This feels like fiction," she said. He took a picture of her just then, arms out, hair caught mid-motion, sunlight on her cheek. "It will be," he replied, "once we remember it." The first afternoon, they walked to the beach barefoot, shoes in hand, jeans rolled up. The sand was warm, fine, and pale, almost white. Seagulls wheeled above them, and the waves rolled in, soft and slow. Lena couldn't stop smiling. They didn't talk much. They didn't have to. Nico took photos. Lena collected shells. When the tide receded slightly, they chased it like children, laughing in spurts that turned into real joy.
Later, they sat beneath a dune, sharing a bottle of orange soda they bought from a roadside shack. Lena leaned her head on Nico's shoulder. "You don't talk much," she said. "You talk enough for both of us," he replied. She laughed. "Fair." He paused, then added, "I just like being near the quiet that isn't empty." It was the most romantic thing anyone had ever said to her. The second day began with sunrise. Lena woke first, drawn by the changing light outside. She slipped out onto the beach alone, wrapped in a blanket. The world was hushed and pale. She sat near the edge of the shore, letting the water lap at her toes. Nico found her an hour later, carrying a thermos and 2 enamel mugs. "I figured you'd beat the sun," he said. They watched it rise together. No words, no words. Afterward, they hiked to a nearby cliff that locals called Mira dos Sussurros, the lookout of whispers. Legend had it The wind was warm. The stars were bright. Nico handed Lena a photo, a black and white print of her from that first day, arms outstretched, spinning in the sunlight. On the back he'd written, "You were the color I never knew I needed." She leaned in close. "I think I love you," she said, almost like a secret. "I know," he replied. "I've been loving you in pieces since the moment we met." The fire crackled, the waves sighed. The world, for a while, held still. Chapter 2. The Tide Between Us. They left the beach the way they had found it, with bare footprints and silence. Their final morning in the coastal village was quiet, too quiet, as if the sea, the sun, and the wind knew what was coming and chose to whisper rather than sing. Lena sipped her coffee slowly on the homestay's terrace, legs tucked beneath her. Nico sat beside her, staring out over the rooftops. His camera lay untouched on the table. He hadn't taken a single photo since the night before. "Do you think we'll come back?" she asked. He didn't answer right away. "I want to," he said eventually, "but I don't know what happens next." They were flying back to different cities, different lives. Their summer had been stolen time outside of the world they normally lived in, where clocks ran faster and expectations were louder. The taxi came just after sunrise. Amalia waved them off with warm eyes and a folded map in Lena's pocket. A farewell gift marked with their favorite places and one final note. "You always have a home here." They sat close, but didn't hold hands in the car. The air between them was too full of feeling. At the airport, everything became sharper. Check-in, security, gate numbers, flight announcements, reality. Lena turned to look at the gate. "You don't have to say anything bold. Just say something real." Nico looked, eyes heavy. "This was real," he said, "every second." And then, like the tide, he was gone. Time moved. Autumn turned into winter. Messages became fewer. Letters stopped. Photos sent in the early morning. Random texts like echoes. They didn't say, "I miss you." They didn't say, but it was there, in the pauses, in the unsaid. Then one day, Lena received a letter. Not an email, not a text, a real letter. Postmarked from a seaside town in France. Inside was a photo. Her, spinning, arms wide, backlit by golden light. And on the back, "I never stopped shooting, but no frame has held more than the memory of you." And that night, she booked a ticket. The train ride was long, quiet, filled with the sound of wind and the smell of coffee and ink. Lena carried only a small bag and the photo tucked into the back of her journal. She arrived just before dusk. The beach was different, colder, but it had the same heartbeat. Nico was there, standing by the water, camera hanging from his neck, looking like the same man, and yet not. He looked older somehow, clearer. She didn't say his name. She just walked to him, and he turned, slowly, like he had known the tide would bring her back. "I missed the sound of your thoughts," he said. Lena smiled. "I brought new ones." They didn't kiss right away. They just stood there. Two people who had never made promises, but always meant to keep them anyway. They rented a small flat above a cafe. She wrote in the mornings. He wandered and took photos. They cooked together. They argued once and made up laughing. They fell asleep listening to the waves again. No longer tourists in time. No longer borrowed days. One afternoon, months later, Nico surprised her with a framed print, a triptych. The first panel, her spinning in the sun. The second, the note from the rock. Even the tides that pull us apart will one day bring us back. Third, a photo of their feet in the sand, side by side. "You framed it," she whispered. "I lived it," he said. They never needed to go back to that first beach, because now, every sunrise, every tide, every whisper of the sea was gone. Chapter 3. Where the Waves Begin, Again. The sea never forgets. It holds memories not in photographs, but in rhythm. The ebb and flow, the crash and hush. And just like the tide, their story did not end when it turned quiet. It only reset, preparing to begin again. Years had passed since Lena walked into Nico's arms on that wind-swept beach in France. Now the waves sang to a new listener. Her name was Clara. She had Nico's quiet eyes and Lena's endless curiosity. From the moment she was born, she was wrapped in the scent of ocean air and the soft weight of stories. They had moved back to the coast, not the same village, but one with the same sky. The same kind of sand that held footprints and secrets. A small cottage sat nestled between olive trees and seagrass. There were toys scattered across the porch, a line of little shoes by the door, and a camera hanging permanently above the fireplace. Nico had published 3 books of photography. Lena had written her first novel, but none of it compared to the magic of watching Clara discover the world, pebble by pebble, bird by bird. And when Clara was 5, she asked the question that made both of them freeze. Where did I begin? They took her hand and walked to the beach. The sun was setting. Lena knelt in the sand. Right here, in the waves, in the wind, in a look between 2 people who didn't know they were finding forever. Clara nodded seriously. Then I'm made of the ocean. Nico smiled. And the stars. Time passed as it always does. Clara grew. She painted, she ran, she sang to seagulls. And one day, she brought home someone new. His name was Elias. He was kind, gentle, and the first person to ever make Clara laugh in the middle of a storm. They were married on the beach, barefoot, of course. Nico took the photos. Lena read a poem. The sky held them like a promise. A year later, Clara gave birth to a daughter. They named her Mira, after the sea. She had tiny fists and a voice loud enough to rival the wind. And when Mira cried, Lena would whisper to her, "You came from a love that never rushed, a love that waited, a love that bloomed in the sand and never left." Nico and Lena, now older, still walked the beach every morning, sometimes in silence, sometimes laughing like they used to in the rain.